For a few seconds during this skydiving exercise 8 years ago, Richard Branson and his Virgin Empire seemed doomed. He'd lost his main parachute and was about to plunge earthwards. With help from his instructors, Branson, of course, survived and went on to become a billionaire.
That's very kind. Thanks for that. All right.
This winter, Branson, the man voted by young people as the person they would most like to run the country, will risk his life again in a balloon called Global Challenger.
I think I remember as a child in a playground, sort of letting a helium balloon escape from my hand, and up it went. And to try to sort of understand the magnificence of that little balloon going off and traveling the whole way around the world and then coming back to that playground, 20, 30 days later. What a thrill it would give most children. Nobody ever really properly grows up.
Branson was born into a middle-class family. It was natural that his father, a barrister, should send him to public school. He went to Stowe, one of the best in the country.
I spent my early years playing a lot of sport, and therefore my studies have completely suffered.
His ambition was to start his own student magazine.
At age 15, my headmaster gave me the choice of either staying at school and not doing the magazine, or leaving school and doing the magazine, and I chose to leave the school and do the magazine.
I moved into a one-room basement in London, and with more than a little help from my friends, went after advertisers, making a mass of mistakes all the time. There was no money, but somehow the material came together, and I managed to sell £5,000 worth of advertising, which was enough to cover both the printing and paper costs for 50,000 copies of the first issue.
One amusing incident was the printers, when they finally had got all the material at the press and beginning to print, found out that I was only 17 and decided that they wouldn't go ahead and print after all. And it was then that I had my first dealings with my solicitors, and they forced them to go ahead and print the magazine, and fortunately managed to pay the bills within a month afterwards, and that was that.
The magazine did well enough to support a students' advisory service.
When I was about 17, my girlfriend got pregnant, and we couldn't find anybody to help us. And it wasn't until she was about 3.5 months pregnant that we managed to get help. And it seemed obvious to me and my friends that there was nowhere for young people to go with a whole range of different problems.
Well, look, what we'll do, it's a very, very simple, easy operation if you want an abortion, which I presume you do. We'll arrange it for you in Birmingham, which is the very kind people, very good people who are helping there.
Virgin Records grew out of Branson's mail-order record business. The company's fortune was founded on the staggering success of Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, a record Branson himself had barely heard. It was recorded at Virgin's studio at the Manor in Oxfordshire.
We sent Mike down there, and he lived there for a year. And out came Tubular Bells, and that was our first release, and very, very successful. We thought this business is a wonderful business.
It certainly was. Tubular Bells sold by the million, and Branson eventually sold the record company for £500 million. Today, Branson is the chairman of one of the biggest private groups in the country, with a turnover of £2 billion a year. His staff, it's fair to say, almost worship him. If Richard wants something done, they'll fall over themselves to find a way of doing it. He regularly throws staff parties like this at his home in Oxfordshire.
Life should be fun. I mean, I think that's one thing that companies take things far too seriously. I think if your staff are enjoying their job and having a good time, they're going to perform that much better. If a company chairman stands in a corner sipping sherry and, with his suit and tie on at a party, then everybody else will feel that they've got to behave in the same way. If the company chairman is the first into the swimming pool, then everybody else will be in the pool and have a good time.
Anybody would like to come for a punt?
The girl in black was given a cheque by Branson for a new pair of leather trousers.
Thank you.
Is it true that your staff all have your home number?
They have my home address, and most of them have my home number as well. And every couple of months I write to them and encourage them to drop me a line with suggestions, ideas, or problems. And I suppose in any one day I might get 15 or 20 letters. Very often there's some great suggestions. Sometimes it's a minor thing, but maybe a major thing from their point of view. Somebody's getting married and has only been given, say, 3 weeks off or 2 weeks off. Can they have 5 weeks off? I mean, and I think that as long as one deals with your staff letters first, it's appreciated, and it seems to help get Virgin where it's got to.
Can't even do it for your brand!
The letters come here to Branson's country home, set in 140 acres. He lives here with his second wife, Joan, and their 2 children, Sam and Holly.
There's a lovely escape, a weekend escape, which is basically 2 cottages knocked into one. And we're fortunate that there's some land with it. I was brought up in the country. I love going back to the country at weekends. It's a great place to escape.
Branson has a London home which he chooses to keep strictly private. He has another 3,000 miles away in the Caribbean. It's called Necker Island.
I went to Virgin Islands when I was about 24, and it was on Friday evening. I just fallen in love with my current wife, and we went down there for the weekend, and in order to have a good time I pretended to the local estate agent I was interested in buying an island. He laid on a helicopter and gave us a wonderful weekend. I just fell in love with this particular island. It was a little jewel, miles from anywhere. Lovely sandy beaches and beautiful coral reef all the way around. And I decided I was going to work extremely hard in order that one day be able to come back and buy it and fulfill my dream.
How much do you think you're worth at the moment?
I don't know. And I mean, I think the important thing in life is that if you are a businessman and you're fortunate enough to be successful as a businessman, sounds a bit corny, but anyway, responsibility comes with it, because if you're a successful doctor or nurse or journalist and you're top of your profession, great wealth doesn't come with it. As a businessman, great wealth comes with it. And from my own point of view, the critical thing is that wealth is then reinvested and not left sitting in a bank. So the pleasure I get is using that wealth to create special things, which and hopefully employ more people and things which we can be proud of.
There's no doubt that Virgin Atlantic Airways is closest to Richard Branson's heart. When the airline was launched with one aircraft 11 years ago, even his best friends told him it would fail. Today, Branson has 13 aircraft, flies to at least 11 long-haul destinations, and makes a profit of £40 million.
If you can create the best in the world in anything, generally speaking, there's a market for the best. I think the fault that people in the past have made in creating independent airlines is they've all gone for the lowest common denominator, the lowest price, the lowest quality. With Virgin Atlantic, we tried to create the best quality airline, and by getting high load factors, we've still been able to offer quite good prices. In a sense, it's always a new business. You've always got to be on top of it. You've always got to make sure that you run it as if it's a little private company, and you're looking after. If somebody's got a problem, you look after it personally as much as you can. And so, I think that whilst we're developing new projects and planting new acorns and seeing new things happen, I will always stay reasonably hands-on when it comes to the airline business.
Branson has just spent £3 million moving his New York operation to these offices in Connecticut. The governor of the state and the local mayor have been invited.
Virgin cola and virgin. Is everything virgin? Even when you fly?
Everything's virgin, except my wife.
Is that a good experience the first time you fly?
Branson, as usual, insists on dressing and behaving informally.
Be it hereby known that Richard Branson, Virgin Atlantic Airways, has been duly accepted as an honorary citizen of Norwalk, Connecticut, the 7th day.
I knew it'd come one day.
You finally made it, Richard.
1, 2, 3,
go!
I need another bottle for Frank, I think.
Branson, unlike most company chairmen, makes a point of mixing business with pleasure. Branson's flamboyance has more than once brought him close to death. In 1987, to publicise the airline, he ballooned across the Atlantic with Per Lindstrand. First, they lost 2 fuel tanks on takeoff.
I don't know whether you're picking me up down there, but I wish you could all be up here enjoying it with us, because beginning of a great adventure.
The adventure ended when they crashed into Ireland, shed too much weight, bounced back into the air, and then plunged into the Irish Sea. Both of them almost drowned.
The last 2 hours were certainly memorable, and lonely 2 hours in that Per had jumped and the balloon had soared back up to 10,000 feet and was out of control. It gave me a lot of time for thinking and reflection, but obviously my main concern was getting out of it alive.
But during those 2 hours, did you contemplate death? And if you did, how did you cope with it?
I think the main thing in any calamitous situation like that is to spend all your energies trying to think about how to get out of it rather than to feel sorry for oneself. And I found a few moments to write a note in case the worst came to the worst, but the rest of the time was spent desperately trying to think of how I could survive and how I could get home again.
This is not a detective story.
Another major threat to Virgin was shown in this commercial made by Virgin but never transmitted. These were the methods used by British Airways aimed at undermining Branson.
It seems incredible, but it's just one example of how far some airlines will go to prevent you flying with their competitors.
I'm really not interested.
Other Virgin customers were phoned by BA staff and told their flights had been overbooked. When BA lost the ensuing court case, it cost them about £4 million.
Were you advised by anybody at one time, well, look, British Airways is very big, don't take them on?
Yes. I mean, I think even our own staff in-house were extremely worried about it. I think it was when we finally found that they'd actually set up a unit where they were illegally accessing our computer information. And we were very fortunate that somebody from that unit who worked for British Airways came and gave us an affidavit and told us what was going on. That we finally decided that that enough was enough. We had to take them on and we had to get it out into the open.
Richard Branson received £500,000 in personal damages, which he distributed among his staff.
The reason for sharing it amongst the staff was that obviously as the staff had suffered as well as myself and the company from the activities of British Airways. It had cost the company quite a lot of money, which therefore meant that the staff were not going to benefit as much as they would have done if British Airways hadn't behaved in the way that they behaved.
A steady stream of boxes, a steady stream of bidders trooped into the lottery's office before the noon deadline.
One of Branson's rare setbacks was when his consortium failed in their bid to run the lottery.
For about 10 years now, I've felt quite strongly that A, that there should be a lottery in Britain, and that secondly, that because there is no risk in running a lottery, that it should be run on a basis that all the profits went to good causes. And about 10 years ago, I approached Mrs. Thatcher and offered to help get that set up. And I've always felt that the Tories were wrong in allowing an individual company to make a lot of money out of running a lottery. I'm a great believer in competition, but this is a monopoly. There is no competition. You can't lose money running a lottery. And it's sad to see one company making hundreds of millions of pounds of profits out of something which is a very, very easy company to run. I believe, and I'm hopeful that the Labour Party, if they get into power, will change that and will either bring a windfall tax on Camelot, but will definitely make it very clear that it will never be run on that basis, again.
Without breaking any confidences, has Tony Blair talked to you about it?
We've spoken about it, and I've been speaking with Chris Smith, his Heritage Secretary, and I think that it will definitely be part of the manifesto.
In a recent survey,
Branson's empire is now a network of hundreds of companies. He enjoys taking on unlikely targets.
Lay down their lives rather than drinking any other coke.
We love to take on big, established, fat, complacent companies.
This is a cola war. Let's go to war. Let's have a bit of fish and chips.
One company, Coca-Cola, dominating the soft drinks business around the world. They've only got one smaller competitor to Pepsi. Any other business which was that big with those sort of margins, with that sort of penetration, would have hundreds of competitors. And so, trying to build a third, and hopefully in my lifetime to try to overtake Coca-Cola in some countries around the world, again, is an exciting, fun challenge.
Richard Branson is perhaps the most publicised person in the world, willing to appear on TV, even to promote other people's products. Today he's taking part in a commercial for a major credit card.
I think that if you create a business and you're the chairman of that business and you're proud of it, there's no point in hiding it under the bushel. You've got to get out there and let the world know that it exists. And you know, I think that Virgin perhaps are better at getting out and letting the world know about Virgin companies than some other, maybe, you know, company chairman in Britain.
Well, since 1984, the cost of everyone's long-distance and international phone calls have come down by an average of 40%. Now, in the case of our company...
Yes, thank you.
When Virgin started flying to America...
Goodbye!
You know, the moments one would like to disappear and be anonymous, and there's still one or two countries in the world that I can walk down the street and be anonymous, but you know, but generally speaking, it's been pleasant rather than, you know, than unpleasant.
If he wants anonymity, he can always dash to his private suite at Virgin's Residencia Hotel in Mallorca.
You know, so one of those dream hotels now. It used to be a ruin when we bought it. Old friends turned it into, you know, a wonderful sort of hideaway. It's in a lovely village called Daya up in the mountains.
Over the next 2 years, Branson will spend another £15 million turning this into an even more expensive hotel. 4 miles from the Residencia, he's brought another crumbling mansion with 5 miles of its own coastline.
We'll have olive groves, which are already there. I suspect that the real virgin olive oil will most likely come from here one day. We're going to plant vineyards. It's going to cost as much as any hotel in the world, so it's obviously going to be in the top end of the market.
In a few weeks, Richard Branson will risk his life again. In this pressurized capsule, he intends to fly around the world non-stop. With him will be his friend and fellow adventurer, Per Lindstrand.
In order to make a circumnavigational flight, you need a very strong wind, of course. The strongest wind we know is called a jet stream. They are normally located around the 30,000-foot level, so we've got to climb right up and sit at that level, same as an airliner, for about 2 weeks.
If something horribly goes wrong, you'll never forgive yourself, but equally, you know, if over the last 10 years I hadn't pushed myself to the limit, you know, I wouldn't be the person I am today. You know, if I can't be happy, well, you know, how can anybody be happy? And I've had an absolutely fascinating life. I mean, you know, every day has been a new challenge, and I sort of lived, you know, I mean, I think in my 44 years, I seem to have lived many lives. I've been very, very fortunate and enjoyed every minute of it.